What's going on, guys? Ted from Immersion here. And you know what time it is. That's right, Xanathar's Guide to Everything is out. And this is my What's New in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, like I do with every other new book release from Wizards of the Coast. Just to get this out of the way, it is $49.95 US, $69.95 Canadian. So there's a lot of new content in here, but this is going to be a little bit different than the way I typically do What's New videos. I'm not going to sit here and read through every individual thing because I'm going to be doing separate videos. Because all of the subclasses that have been released have already existed in some form in Unearthed Arcana, which I have reviewed when they came out. I'm going to do separate, shorter videos for each subclass, comparing its version in the final published book versus what was in Unearthed Arcana. So I'll do separate videos for those. I'm going to be doing the same thing for feats and a couple of the other things. So I'm just going to be going through literally what is new for this book. All right, let's take a look. So there is a lot of art in here. Let's see our disclaimer. Here in the front, we can see both covers. The disclaimer is, no goldfish were harmed in the making of this book, especially not Silgar. Silgar definitely did not die because we forgot to change his water. If you see Xanathar, make sure he knows that. Be perfectly clear, Silgar was not harmed and we had nothing to do with it. Better yet, don't bring it up and don't mention us. So here's our table of contents. So let's roll right into it. We have our introduction here. Again, these are Xanathar's Guide to Everything. So there's these little like quotes down the bottom here. Like, what's that, Silgar? No, not yet, my fishy friend. They just got here. Perhaps after we chat a bit, I find a little conversation at the beginning helps digestion. So you'll have these little comments down here from Xanathar throughout the book. So this has a little conversation about 10 rules to remember, which aren't necessarily new, but I'm going to give you just the high-level things, because this book basically is a DM and a player tool all in one. So it says the core rules makes frequent use of using ability scores of entering combat and spellcasting sections of the player's handbook. The book's Appendix A is also crucial. If you're a DM, you should know where to look things up in the DMG, the introduction to the monster manual, blah, blah, blah. So the DM adjudicates the rules. One rule overrides all others. The DM is the final authority on how rules work in play. That's true. Just have to deal with it. That's the way that's the DM's job, to adjudicate the rules. What they say goes. Alright, so 10 rules to remember. Exception supersedes general rule. These are very good things to know. General rules cover each part of the game. For example, the combat rules tell you that melee attacks use strength and ranged weapons use dex. That's a general rule. And a general rule is in effect as long as something in the game doesn't explicitly say otherwise, which there are things that do say that. The game also includes elements, class features, spells, magic items, monster abilities, and the like that sometimes contradict a general rule. For example, if a feature says you can make melee weapon attacks using your charisma, you can do so even though it disagrees with the general rule. Round down. Whenever you divide or multiply a number in the game, round down if you end up with a fraction, even if it's 1/2 or greater. Advantage and disadvantage. Even if you have more than one factor that gives you advantage or disadvantage, you only have it once, and if you have advantage and disadvantage on the same roll, they cancel each other out. Combining different effects. This is one we hear all the time. Basically, you can't get same things that add benefits to your AC. Like you can't wear... Like, see, you can't be a monk and a barbarian and add both of those to your AC because you can only do one. For example, if Bless is cast on you while you're still under the effect of another Bless, you don't get 2d4. Reaction timing. Certain game features let you use a special thing. Making opportunity attacks and casting the shield spell are two typical uses of reactions. If you're unsure when a reaction in relation to its trigger, here's the rule. The reaction happens after its trigger completes, unless the description of the reaction explicitly states otherwise. Resistance and vulnerability. The order that you apply modifiers to damage is 1. Any relevant damage immunity. 2. Any addition or subtraction to the damage. 3. 1 relevant resistance. And then 4. 1 relevant damage vulnerability. So even if multiple sources give you resistance to a type of damage you're taking, you can apply resistance to it only once. The same is true of vulnerability. Proficiency bonus. If you add your proficiency bonus to a roll, you add it only once to the roll, even if multiple things in the game say your bonus applies. Moreover, if more than one thing tells you to double or halve your bonus, you can only do that once. Or you double it only once or halve it only once. Bonus action spells. If you want to cast a spell that has a casting time of 1 bonus action, remember that you can't cast any other spells before or after it on the same turn, except for cantrips, the casting time of 1 action. Concentration. As soon as you start casting a spell or use a special ability that requires concentration, your concentration on another effect ends immediately. Temporary hit points aren't cumulative. If you have temporary hit points and receive more of them, you don't add them together unless a game feature says you can. Instead, you decide which temporary hit points to keep. So, 10 general rules. Then we have here is our character options. This is all of the character classes. But at the beginning of each character class section, there is something new. So I'm going to talk about that. So, first of all, there is beautiful art in the book. And one thing they did sort of akin to older editions of D&D is each type of class has a piece of art. So, like, the Zealot, the Storm Herald, and, what's it called? The other one. The Ancestral Guardian. There are art for each one. And there's the same thing for every subclass in the book. There is art for each class. And it tells you, left to right what they are. So, for Barbarian, they have a couple stuff here at the beginning. They have personal totems. So they have a table here to roll a d6 for personal totems. As an example, we have a necklace made from the claws of a young cave bear that you slew single-handedly as a child. We have tattoos. You might have tattoos that have some meaningful to your barbarian tribe. Etched on the back of your hands are the paws of a cave bear, for example. Superstitions. You are tribal culture, so there could be superstitions there. If an elf looks you in the eye, they're trying to read your thoughts. And again, we have some more stuff from Xanathar. And then we have the subclass stuff here. And then we're going to roll into bards. Again, more art for the different bards. So we have stuff about your defining work. If your character is just starting out, your ultimate defining work is likely in the future. But in order to make any sort of living, chances are you have like a known piece. And we've got right here, Asmodeus' Golden Arse, a dramatic poem you claim was inspired by your personal visit to Avernus. And they have a couple listed other personal works. This is another D6 table. There is an instrument table. So basically this is, do you have like a familial or an inherited instrument, or is this sort of an off-the-rack thing? If it's inherited, it's like we've got a wooden bullywug croak box as an example of an instrument you might have. Or an embarrassment, because, every bard's probably summoned or at some point suffered an embarrassment, so they have a list of embarrassments to help flesh out your character. We have the matinee performance when a circus's owlbear got loose and terrorized the crowd, an embarrassment. Then we also have muses for the bard. So we have nature, love, or conflict as ideas for muses. And then again, we roll into the various bardic colleges. And then now we are into, back one page, cleric. So cleric, we have temple, keepsake, and secret. So for your temple, let's say you come from a temple famed for a brewery it operates. Some say you smell like one of its ales. Keepsake. A metal-bound book that tells how to hunt and destroy infernal creatures, as an example of something that helps to symbolize your faith. Or a secret. An imp offers you counsel. You try to ignore the creature, but sometimes its advice is helpful. Again, things to help further flesh out your cleric, make them a little more interesting. And then down here I will say there's a table about serving a pantheon, philosophy, or force. So because a lot of the way things are written are these clerics serve a specific deity. This is for serving things outside of that, like some clerics, especially in the world like Eberron, serve a whole pantheon rather than a single deity. In certain campaigns, a cleric might serve a cosmic force, such as life or death, or philosophy or concept, or a philosophy or concept such as love or peace, or one of the 9 alignments. Talk with your DM about the options. The cleric's class feature often refers to your deity. If you are devoted to a pantheon, cosmic force, or philosophy, your cleric features still work. So then we have our cleric domains. Again, art for both. Now we are into the druid. Druid has a treasured item. something possibly about their origin story, like a miniature golden sickle handed down to you by your mentor. A guiding aspect. Let's see. The sea is a constant, churning cauldron of power and chaos. It reminds you that accepting change is necessary to sustain yourself in the world. And then lastly, we have the mentor for the druid. So, your mentor has appeared to you only in visions. You have yet to meet this person, and you're not sure such a person exists in mortal form. Again, that's a pretty cool character concept that could allow for a lot of cool role-playing stuff with you and your DM, or, at least story writing. And then again, we have our druid art as well. And then, this is sort of expanded. I guess I probably could go, maybe I will go into this into a specific video, but this is a section on learning beast shapes, and it is, as you can see, 1, 2, basically 3 full pages. It says the wild shape lets you transform into any beast you've seen. That gives you a tremendous amount of flexibility, making it easy to amass an array of beast forms. When you gain wild shape as a 2nd level druid, you might wonder which beasts you've already seen. The following table is organized from the monster manual. Consider the environment your druid grew up in, and then consult the table for this list of animals that your druid has probably seen by level 2. These tables can also help you and your DM determine which animals you might see on your travels. In addition, the table includes each beast's challenge rating, and note whether a beast has a flying or swimming speed. The information will help you determine whether you qualify to assume that beast's form. The table includes all individual beasts that are eligible for a wild shape, up to challenge rating of 1. Or the circle forms feature for the Circle of the Moon Druid up to challenge rating 6. So let's see if you were a mountain druid. We've got, eagle, goat, bloodhawk, sturge, pteranodon, giant goat, giant eagle, lion, giant elk, saber-toothed tiger. I'm looking, I don't see, it looks like this is just player's handbook / monster manual ones. I don't see anything that jumps out as something from, say, any of the supplements or Volo's guide. So it looks like this is just monster manual monsters. Alright, so we're at the fighter now. We have fighter's heraldic sign. Let's see, a skull with a dagger through it, representing the doom you bring to your enemies. Your instructor as a fighter. Let's see, if you were a tribal warrior, your instructor grew up in a tribe where fighting for one's life was practically an everyday occurrence. And we have your signature style, which is pretty cool. So we've got, again, these are pretty much have all been D6 tables thus far. Let's see, you have a brutal style. Your attacks rain down like hammer blows, meant to splinter bone or send blood flying. We have our fighter art. Oh, still on fighter. Now we're on to the monk. So we have a monastery, makes sense for the monk. Your monastery is high in the branches of an immense tree in the Feywild. A monastic icon. Ooh, let's go with the dragon. A dragon once laired within your monastery, its influence remains long after its departure. And then your monastic master here. Your master was a tyrant whom you had to defeat in single combat to complete your instruction. We have, again, our monk art. And now we're on to paladin. Personal goal as a paladin, let's say it's revenge. Your oath is the vehicle through which you will right an ancient wrong. Symbol, a dragon, emblematic of your nobility and peace and your ferocity in combat. And then we got 4 for paladins. We got the nemesis, a fiend or celestial, the agent of a power of the outer planes who has been charged with corrupting or redeeming you as appropriate. And then temptations as a paladin. That's pretty cool. Let's say pride. Your deeds are noteworthy and no one takes note of them more often than you do. We have our paladins with our paladin art. Ranger. We have your ranger view of the world. Walls are for cowards who huddle behind them while others do the work of making the world safe. Your homeland. You wandered the far north, learning how to protect yourself and prosper in a realm overrun by ice. Your sworn enemy. You seek revenge on nature's behalf for the greatest transgressions your foe has committed. Then we have our ranger art. We have our 3 ranger archetypes. And then, we got the 4 archetypes here for the rogue. Your guilty pleasure could be adding to your collection of exotic coins. Your adversary is the master of a local thieves guild who wants you to join the organization or leave town. And then we've got benefactor. A magistrate once kept you out of jail in return for information on a powerful crime lord. Again, you can see how much this would add a lot of depth to any character. Again, there's limited options here, but still, it's something. So we have our rogues, sorcerer art. We have our arcane origin. There's the bottom one. You are made in a vat by an alchemist. Interesting choice. Reactions. So your powers are seen as a great blessing by those around you, and you are expected to use them in service to your community. We've got supernatural marks. One of your ears is noticeably larger than the other, or something like, let's see. Your eyes are an unnatural color. There's another option. Sign of your sorcery. For a moment after you cast a spell, the area around you grows dark and gloomy. Then we have our sorceress origins. Then we are on to our warlock. So we have our patron's attitude towards us. Your patron tricked you into a pact and treats you as slave. Special terms of the pact. You must occasionally conduct bizarre rituals to maintain your pact. And a binding mark, like one of your eyes looks the same color as one of your patron's eyes. Interesting. We have our two warlock. We have some art here, and we have our 2 warlock subclasses. Then we have the Eldritch Invocations, which again I'll go over in a separate video. Then we have the Wizard, your spell book. Small stones inscribed with spells and kept in a cloth bag rather than an actual book. It's like a bag of spell stones. Your Ambition. If you can fully understand magic, you can unlock its use for all and usher in an era of equality. And your eccentricity. Your most prized possession is a dead worm that you keep inside a potion vial. And then we have our art for our war wizard here. So that is the subclass stuff. Again, there will be individual videos on all of these. Then here we have what is called, this says, this is your life. This is sort of a, again, further character expansion stuff. So it says how and when to use these tables. If you're comfortable with letting the dice decide a certain fact about your character, go ahead and roll. If not, just go ahead and choose which ones you want. Although these tables are meant to augment the step-by-step character creation process in the player's handbook, they don't occupy a specific place in the process. So we have, section by section, we have origins, personal decision, life events, supplemental tables. So the origins, it talks about here, it's like, oh, you had parents, right? Well, here's a section on your parents. You know who they were, you don't know who they are. And if you're non-human parents, we've got half-elf parents, half-orc parents, tiefling parents. Like, let's say one parent was an elf and one was a half-elf. Both were half-elves or so on. Tiefling, one parent was a human, the other was a devil. One parent was a tiefling, the other one was a human. We have birthplace, so we've got like home in the Feywild, on an outer plane, in the forest. Your siblings, basically, and it has occupation, alignment, status, relationship, and order details, things to figure out. If you're a dwarf or an elf, subtract 2 from your roll for your number of siblings. And then we have number of siblings table and the birth order of where you sit in that. Family and friends. So here's your family. Where are they at? Absent parent. And then how wealthy your family was. Your childhood home. Was it on the streets? Was it a palace? Childhood memories. 3d6 plus your charisma modifier. I'm still haunted by my childhood, or like everyone knew who I was. I had friends and everything was great. Then we have a section of personal decisions. These are all background related. These are all D6 tables. You can see Acolyte, Charlatan, Criminal Entertainer. I will say they are all tied. They're all written specifically for Player's Handbook. They don't cover Sword Coast Adventures Guide, but I'm assuming whatever statistics you would use for your Sword Coast Adventures Guide background, you would use for these. They don't have Far Traveler, unfortunately, which doesn't fit. I don't know, let's look at a soldier, right? I became a soldier because a relative of mine was a soldier and I wanted to carry on the family tradition. Then we have class training. So we have a D6 tables for class. So why did you become what you became? I became a cleric because my god gave me an unmistakable sign. I dropped everything to serve the divine. There's actually like a little tale here. We learn about like a character almost drowned at sea, had her spell book, and now she's a great wizard, right? That's a continuation of her story. Then we have life events. So, no matter how long you've been alive, you certainly experienced at least one signature event in your life. So there's this table here tells you, you know, how many events you've had and like on what time in your life, your current age, right? You roll. So your current age is, let's say, oh, I don't know, 31 to 40, and you had 1d6 life events, and then you figure that out. Or you can roll if you don't want to just pick your current age. And then here's a list of life events. So let's grab, let's go for 100, right? Something truly strange happened to you. Roll on the weird stuff table, which we'll get to. So here, these are your secondary tables, right? So you've got all these here. So it could say, like, one of these was roll on the tragedies table, roll on the boons table. Let's go look at the boons table. You found something interesting. You gained one additional trinket. You found some money. You have an additional 1d20 when you start. You found a riding horse. You found a treasure map. We've got adventures. So this is adventures you would have gone on. We have crime, like you've been convicted. What is your crime? Arcane matters. You know, drank a potion, found a spell scroll. Punishment. You're punished for some crime. Right here. Here's this. Here's your tragedy table. Here is the war table. And then the weird stuff table. Now, a lot of these are, like, adventures is a D100, arcane is a D10, boons a D10, crimes a D8, punishment is a D12, supernatural events is a D100, tragedies is a 12, war is a 12, weird stuff is a 12. So if we look at, let's say, 4 on the weird stuff table, a dragon held you prisoner for 1d4 months until adventurers killed it. Then we have these other supplemental tables here. What was your, you know, if you need help figuring out your alignment, cause of death, class. I think this is more for NPCs. To give you randomly determined characteristics and other facts about individuals who are part of your character's life. Use these tables when directed to do so by another table or when you simply want to come up with a piece of information. So we've got alignment, cause of death, class, occupation, race, relationship to you, and then status. And then it says what's next. You've done all this stuff. Then we've got a section here. This is all the racial feats. It's only these 2 pages. Again, I'll do a separate video on that. Then we have the Dungeon Master tools. Again, some pretty sweet looking owl bear art over here. I like this a lot. There's a lot of good stuff here for the DM. They have a section on falling rules. So normally you fall, and it basically states right here that per the falling rules that exist in the game, it's assumed that you fall immediately to the ground. Whenever you lose flight, you just drop. That's it. Straight down, however many feet you are, no questions asked. You fall to your death. So this has a special, a different rule for rate of falling. So it says when you fall from a great height, you descend up to 500 feet. Keep that in mind, folks. 500, I mean, basically the existing rules is you're supposed to fall to your death. No more often than not. This is saying you fall 500 feet. When it gets, like, when you fall, instant 500 foot drop. So that's 50d6 damage if you hit the ground. If you're still falling on your next turn, you descend up to 500 feet at the end of that turn. This process continues until the fall ends, either because you hit the ground or the fall is halted or otherwise. And then there's flying creatures and falling. It has a special rule, like if you want flying creatures to be more resistant to falling, because it basically says if a falling creature is knocked prone or has its speed reduced to 0, it falls, unless it can either hover or has something like the fly spell cast on it. If you'd like to give him a better chance at surviving, let's see. Use this rule. Subtract the creature's current flying speed from the distance it fell before calculating falling damage. This rule is helpful to a flyer that is knocked prone but is still conscious and has a current flying speed that is greater than 0. If you use the rule for rate of falling in the previous section, a creature flying descends 500 feet on the turn when it falls, just as other creatures do. But if the creature starts any of its later turns still falling and is prone, it can halt the fall on its turn by spending half of its flying speed to counter the prone condition. We have a sleep section, which is a lot of interesting stuff here. So it goes into what it will take to kind of like wake up a sleeper. It's basically an action, but whispering doesn't disturb somebody sleeping unless the sleeper has a passive perception score of 20 or higher and the sleeper or the whisperers are within 10 feet. Speak at normal volume awakens the sleeper if the environment is otherwise silent, and the sleeper has a passive perception of 15 or higher. Has a section on sleeping in armor, saying that light armor, no problems. If you sleep in medium or heavy armor, it's difficult to fully recover from a long rest. You finish a long rest, you regain only 1/4 of your spent hit dice. If you have any levels of exhaustion, it doesn't reduce them. So it's actually not too bad. And then it has a section for going without a long rest. Basically, whenever you end a 24-hour period without finishing a long rest, you must make a DC 10 Constitution saving throw or suffer from a level of exhaustion. After the first 24 hours, it increases by 5 DC, and then every 24-hour period after it goes up. The DC resets to 10 when you finish a long rest. Adamantine weapons are mentioned in the Dungeon Master's Guide, so it has a section on them, basically saying when an adamantine weapon or piece of ammunition hits an object, the hit is a critical hit. Then the adamantine version of a weapon or 10 pieces of ammunition costs 500 gold more than the normal version, whether the weapon or ammunition is made of the metal or coated with it. Which essentially means, as far as I can tell, it doesn't say otherwise, but the way it's written, you would think that makes it a magic weapon, right? Adamantine, at least unless they're just treating it like to overcome damage resistance for like elemental type creatures or golems. Then we have a section here on tying knots, which is new. To determine the effectiveness of a knot, the creature who ties the knot makes an intelligence sleight of hand check when doing so. The total of the check becomes the DC for an attempt to untie the knot with an intelligence sleight of hand check, or slip out of it with a dexterity acrobatics check. The rule intentionally links sleight of hand with intelligence rather than dexterity. This is an example of how to apply the rules in the variant skills with different abilities section. I feel like they did that mostly just to call attention to the fact that that rule exists. Then we have a whole section on tool proficiencies. Now, a lot of this we sort of have seen in the tool feats that we got, but basically, this was a way to try to entice you to take tool proficiencies, especially in ones that aren't as openly useful, like, say, thieves' tools. So, to make tools more attractive choices for the characters, here's a couple options. Advantage: if use of a tool and the use of a skill both apply to the check, and the character is proficient with this tool and the skill, considering allowing the character to make the check with advantage. The simple benefit can go a long way towards encouraging players to pick up tool proficiencies. Added benefit: in addition, consider giving the characters who have the relevant skill and a relevant tool proficiency an added benefit on a successful check. The benefit might be in the form of more detailed information, could stimulate the effect of a different sort of successful check. For example, a character proficient with Mason's tools makes a wisdom perception check to find a secret door in a stone wall. Not only does the character notice the door's presence, but you decide that the character's proficiency entitles the character to an automatic success on an investigation check to determine how to open the door. And then it's going to you're going to see that basically each one has the name, like a list of things, and then a table at the end. So the way this works is components. It actually tells you what is in the kit. In case you were curious, like what's in brewer supplies. It's a large glass jug, a quantity of hops, a siphon, and several feet of tubing. Skills: every tool potentially provides advantage on a skill check, or on a check when used in conjunction with certain skills, provided the character is proficient with the tool and the skill. And they have the whole section on that. And then special use: proficiency with a tool usually brings with it a particular benefit. And then sample DCs: a sample at the end of each section lists the activities that a tool can be used to perform and suggests DCs for the necessary ability checks. So I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to skip over the components because I don't think I don't need to tell you what's contained in an alchemy kit, but I will tell you what skills it pertains to and what your little special thing is, and maybe one thing off of the sample item table. So it can aid in Arcana and Investigation checks. Arcana checks to identify potions for this is again for alchemist supplies, and Investigation checks to deal with anything to deal with chemicals or substances that may have been used in an area. And then it has alchemical crafting. You can use this tool proficiency to create alchemical items. You can spend money to collect raw materials, which weigh 1 pound for every 50 GP spent. The DM allows a character to make a check indicated using the skill indicated with advantage. As part of a long rest, you can use alchemist supplies to make 1 dose of acid, alchemist fire, antitoxin, oil, perfume, or soap. Subtract half the value of the created item from the total GP worth of raw materials you are carrying. And let's see, to neutralize acid is a DC 20 using your alchemy tools. So brewer supplies, it helps with history involving alcohols. Medicine to treat anyone suffering from alcohol poisoning or to use alcohol to dull pain. Persuasion to help someone to give somebody a drink and help with the persuasiveness. And then potable water is your special skill. As part of a long rest, you can purify up to 6 gallons of water, or 1 gallon as part of a short rest, and then DC 15 to identify an alcohol. Calligrapher's supplies helps with Arcana in identifying who wrote a script of magical nature. History when analyzing ancient writings and things like that. Decipher treasure map. You can make an intelligence check to determine a map's age, whether the map includes any hidden messages or similar facts, and DC 20 is to forge a signature, which I feel like is the opposite. We'll look at forgery kit when we get there, but carpenter's tools. History for wooden buildings and large wooden objects. Investigation, so tricks of construction that can conceal areas from discovery. Perception, to find trapdoors and secret passages. Stealth, to avoid places that creak and groan. And you can fortify something. With 1 minute of work and raw materials, you can make a door or window harder to open, increasing the DC by 5. And then also it has temporary shelter. As part of a long rest, you can construct a lean-to or similar shelter to keep you dry and in the shade for the duration of the rest. Because it was fashioned quickly from whatever wood was available, the shelter collapses 1d3 days after being assembled. And let's see, DC 15 to find a weak point in a wooden wall. Cartographer's tools works with Arcana, History, and Religion to identify when the map was made, to determine its geographical features, and so on and so forth. Nature, to answer questions. Physical geography makes it easier for you to answer questions or solve issues relating to terrain around you. And then survival, to show how routes evolve and where settlements arise in relation to geographic locations. And you can, while traveling, you can draw a map as you go, in addition to engaging in other activity as a cartographer. DC 15, estimate direction and distance to a landmark. Cobbler's tools, Arcana and History, magical properties, identifying the magical properties of enchanted boots, or the history about such items. Investigation, let's see. Experience in repairing shoes makes it easier to identify where damage may have come from shoes. Or dirt, is accumulated on them. Maintain shoes. As part of a long rest, you can repair your companion's shoes for the next 24 hours. Up to 6 creatures of your choice who wear shoes you worked on can travel 10 hours a day without making saving throws for exhaustion, rather than the normal 8. And then with 8 hours of work, you can add a hidden compartment to shoes. The compartment can hold an object that is 3 inches long and 1 inch deep and wide. Make an intelligence check using your tool proficiency to determine the intelligent investigation check needed to find the compartment. And then DC 15 to find a hidden compartment in a boot heel. Cook's utensils, history, involving cultural eating habits. Medicine, you can transform medicine that's bitter or sour into a pleasing concoction. And survival, you can make do with ingredients you scavenge that others would be unable to transform into nourishing meals. Prepare meals. You and up to 5 creatures of your choice, if you do this, regain 1 extra hit die when you 1 extra hit point per hit die spent during a short rest. A DC 10 to create a typical meal. or duplicate one. Disguise kit works with deception, improve convincing lies, intimidation, scare someone off with funky, scary makeup. Performance, help to evoke the desired reaction, and persuasion. Again, you're being designed in such a persuasive manner. Create a disguise. As part of a long rest, you can create a disguise. It takes you 1 minute to don such a disguise once you've created it. You can carry only one such disguise on you at a time without drawing undue attention unless you have a bag of holding or similar method to keep them hidden. Each disguise weighs a pound. At other times, it takes 10 minutes to craft a disguise that involves moderate changes to your appearance, and 30 minutes for one that requires more extensive changes. And then again, DC 10 to cover injuries or distinguishing marks. Forgery kit helps with Arcana to determine if it's a fake or real magic item. Deception to use this to help you get into places. Basically lying and trying to get into places. History to create fake historical documents or to tell if one's authentic. Investigation to determine how an object was made. Other tools. Knowledge for other tools makes your forgeries that much more believable. For example, you could combine proficiency with a forgery kit and cartographer's tools to make a fake map. Quick fake. As part of a short rest, you produce a forged document no more than 1 page in length. As part of a long rest, you can produce a document that is up to 4 pages long and requires an investigation check for people to spot the fake. You can mimic handwriting with DC 15. We got a lot to go. There are a lot of tools out there. Gaming set helps with history. Let's see, historical figures that may have enjoyed the game, and insight on how to discern if people are trying to fake you out. Sleight of hand. Sleight of hand is a useful skill for cheating in a game. It allows you to swap pieces, eternally engrossing a target in a game by manipulating the opponent's dexterous movements. It's such a great distraction for a pickpocketing attempt. And then again, DC 15 to catch a player cheating. Glassblower's tools, Arcana and History, to look at potion bottles and understand what's going on there. Investigation, looking at broken glass or glass objects. With 1 minute, identify weakness. With 1 minute of study, you can identify the weak points in a glass object. Glassblower's tools, 10 will identify the source of glass. Herbalism kit, Arcana that deals with plants, or your attempts to identify potions. Investigation, pick out details and clues that others might miss in areas of overgrown plant life. Your mastery of herbalism helps you improve the ability to treat illnesses and wounds by augmenting methods using natural plants. Nature and survival. When you travel across the wild, it's easier to identify plants and spot food sources of actual food rather than just overlooking or finding poisonous things. Identify plants. You can identify most plants with a quick inspection of their appearance and smell. DC 15 to find plants. Jeweler's tools. Proficiency will get you, knowledge about reputed mystical uses of gems. Investigation in picking out clues that they might hold in jewel-encrusted objects. You can identify and determine the value of gems at a glance. For DC 15 to modify a gem's appearance. And the water vehicles, Arcana to determine how they're operated. Investigation and perception, to search for hidden clues on the vehicle. Vehicle handling. When piloting a vehicle, you add your proficiency bonus to the vehicle's AC and saving throws. DC 10 to navigate through rough terrain or waters. Leatherworker's tools. Arcana, when you inspect magic items crafted from leather, such as boots and some cloaks. Investigation, as you draw your knowledge of leather to pick out details that others might overlook in other leather items. Identify hides. You can spot the difference between leather crafted using dwarven methods or elven methods, things of that nature. DC 10 to modify a leather item's appearance. Mason's tools, we already talked about a little bit. History to see the construction. Investigation, any insight about the actual structure itself. Perception to look for trapdoors or secret passages. Your special ability is Demolition. You deal double damage to structures with your weapon attacks. And with the Mason's tools, chisel a small hole in a stone wall. Musical instrument, performance, the ability to put on a good show. Compose a tune as part of a long rest. You can sort of write up your own little tune. Use this ability to impress a noble or spread scandalous rumors. DC 10 to identify a tune. Navigator's tools, survival, insight into the most likely location for roads and settlements. Sighting, you can determine your position on a nautical chart and the time of day. DC 10 to plot course. Painter supplies, arcana history and religion, such as to work on the magical properties of a painting or origins of strange murals found in a dungeon. Investigation and perception, your knowledge of the practices behind creating visual art can grant you additional insight. As part of a short or long rest, you can produce a simple work of art. Although your work might lack precision, you can capture an image or scene or make a quick copy of a piece of art you just saw. DC 20 to create a painting with a hidden message in it. Poisoner's Kit. History to understand about infamous poisonings, investigation and perception, to inspect poison objects, medicine, to figure out how to best care for a poisoned patient, nature and survival to know which plants and animals are poisonous. Handle poison. Your proficiency allows you to handle and apply a poison without risk of exposing yourself to its effects. DC 10 to spot a poisoned object. Potter's tools. History to determine where anything made of ceramic was created and its origin. Investigation and perception to oversee any additional things contained within ceramics. By examining pottery shards with the reconstruction ability, you can determine an object's origin, intact form, and its likely purpose. DC 15 to create a serviceable pot. Smith's tools helps with arcana and history, examining metal objects such as weapons. Investigation to see if there's any additional insight into weapons, armor, and the like. Repair, with access to your tools and an open flame hot enough to make the metal pliable, you can restore 10 hit points to a damaged metal object for each hour of work. DC 10 to sharpen a dull blade. Thieves' tools, history about locations that are renowned for their traps. Investigation and perception when looking for traps. You can also use these now to set traps, which is a cool thing. Which previously there's really no way to set traps. There's no trap class. People associate it with rangers, but that's really only due to like snares and trapping, but there is no mechanical thing for that. So, as part of a short rest, you can create a trap using items you have on hand. The total of your check determines the DC for someone else to attempt to discover or disable it. The trap deals damage appropriate to the materials used in the crafting, such as poison or a weapon, or damage equal to half the total of your check, whichever the DM deems appropriate. And then the DCs vary to pick locks and disable traps. Tinker tools. Can determine the age of objects just by looking at them. Investigation. Inspect a damaged object to know what caused it and how long ago. Repair. You can restore 10 hit points to a damaged object for each hour of work. For any object, you need access to raw materials required to repair it. For metal objects, you need access to an open flame to make it hot and pliable. Or the metal, rather. DC 10 to temporarily repair a disabled device. 2 more. Weaver's tools, arcana and history. Lend you insight into cloth objects, including cloaks and robes. Investigation. You can spot clues and deductions and others would look over when you examine tapestries, upholstery, clothing, and woven items. Repair. As part of a short rest, you can repair a single damaged object or cloth object and craft clothing. Assuming you have sufficient cloth and thread, you can create an outfit for a creature as part of a long rest. DC 10 to mend a hole in a piece of cloth. And lastly, we have woodcarver's tools. Your arcana and history, your expertise lends to additional insight for wooden objects such as figurines or arrows. Nature to add into insight when examining trees. Repair to fix a short rest for fix a single damaged wood object. Or craft arrows. As part of a short rest, you can craft up to 5 arrows. As part of a long rest, you can craft up to 20. You must have enough wood on hand to do so. DC 15 to carve an intricate pattern in wood. Whew. That was long. We're at 44 minutes, and we are 85 pages into almost a 200-page book. So, here we go. Next up is all about spellcasting. So, we're going to talk in just a sec here about identifying spells, perceiving casters it works, and then there's a whole section on, like, spells on a grid, which is actually pretty cool to look at, so we'll get to that. Let's see right here. So, we were talking about spellcasting. There's a section here all about, like, observing other spellcasters and trying to identify what a spell's being cast. And it's flat out says if it's innate spellcasting or subtle spell augmented, you just can't tell what it is. But it says that to determine, you can either use an action or a reaction to make an intelligence arcana check. And the DC is 15 plus the spell's level. Why is it 15 and not 10? I couldn't tell you, because a DC 24 to identify a 9th level spell is a little ridiculous. I mean, it is a 9th level spell, but still. If it's on your class spell list, you have advantage on this. And it's still an intelligence arcana check, even if it's cast with wisdom or charisma. My problem is, it serves literally no purpose. I would say 9 times out of 10, maybe 8 times out of 10, the reason you want to know what spell is being cast is probably so you can attempt to counterspell it, right? Well, you can't counterspell it if you have to use your reaction to identify it, and you can't use your action because it's not on your turn. So you can either attempt to counterspell and hope for the best, or use a reaction to identify it and be like, oh, that's what that was. Should have counterspelled it. I mean, I guess maybe you can use your reaction to... Even still, if you use your reaction to identify it, it doesn't help you. Unless, I guess, you use your reaction to identify it and you yell out, he's casting whatever, so that your other spellcaster in the party who happens to also have counterspell can counterspell it with knowing what it is. I just, like, I don't see the need for it. Or not the need for it, I don't see what purpose this serves. You know, I mean, I guess in an out-of-combat scenario, if you're observing other people fighting and you're not in the initiative, I really don't know. It has a section here on invalid spell targets, which is a lot more interesting and important than I would have thought. Like, if something says you can target an object or a creature, it means you can target both. Like, technically, I think Firebolt says you can target an object or a creature, but Magic Missile says you can only target a creature. So you technically can't attack an inanimate object with Magic Missile. It just doesn't work. For example, one might cast Charm Person on a creature believed to be a humanoid. Oh, okay. Well, a spell specifies what a caster can target, a humanoid, beast, etc. But what happens if a spell targets something that's an invalid target? For example, cast Charm Person on a creature believed to be a humanoid, not knowing that the target is in fact a vampire. Here's how to handle it using the following rules. You cast a spell on someone or something that can't be affected by the spell. Nothing happens to that target, but if you use the spell slot to cast the spell slot is still expended. If the spell normally has no effect on the target that succeeds on a saving throw, the invalid target appears to have succeeded on its saving throw, even though it didn't attempt one, giving no hint with the creature that it was in fact an invalid target. Otherwise, you perceive that the spell did nothing to the target. Wow, okay, so if you cast it and it just doesn't work, you just assume that they passed the saving throw. I thought you would have possibly just known that it didn't work, but or that whether they passed or failed, but I guess not. And then here you can see 2 big full pages of about casting on a grid. So they actually have set in here for making templates, which was a little bit of a shock. So you can see cone, sphere, square area using tokens, square area with total cover, cones using tokens, lines using tokens, different ways to represent lines. So, if you decide you want to do this, which you don't have to, there are 2 alternatives for determining the exact location of an area. The template method, which you can see over here, is like you would take like a cutout, like most of the spell templates, like a triangle or circle or square, and then over here, oops, on this side, you can see like the cone. This is using like individual squares and then the lines. So it's like actual on the grid versus just a cone-based template. So, making a template, get a piece of paper or cardstock, Cut in the shape of the effect you want. Every 5 feet equals 1 inch on the spell's template. For example, a 20-foot radius sphere of fire spell is actually 40-foot diameter, would translate into a circular template with an 8-inch diameter. So, basically, being adjacent to the edge of the template isn't enough for a square to be included. Here we go. If any part of a square is under the template, that square is included in the area of effect. If the creature's miniature is in an affected square, the creature is in the area. Being adjacent to the edge of the template isn't enough for a square to be included in the area of effect. You can also use this method without a grid. If you do so, a creature is included in an area of effect to any part of the creature's miniature base is overlapping by the template. That's using the template method. Then the token method is meant to make areas of effect tactile and fun. To use this method, grab some dice or other tokens, which you are going to use to represent areas of effect. Rather than faithfully representing the shape of the different effects, this method gives you a way to create square-edged versions of them on a grid easily, as described in the following subsections. Every 5-foot square of an area of effect grid becomes a die or other token you place on the grid. Each token goes inside a square, not on an intersection of lines. If an area's token is in a square, the square is included in the area of effect. Circle. This method depicts everything using squares, and a circular area of effect becomes a square in it. So basically, they're literally having you use tokens, which I'm a little shocked to see. Cone is represented by rows of tokens. So this is a big debate I've seen, is like, is a cone like this, 5, 10, and then out, or is it like this, where it's just a straight up triangle? So they're just saying there's both methods. And they just kind of walk you through how to do it. This section, after that, is on encounter building. So this is sort of a more advanced encounter building table to make things a little bit easier to understand, so you're not dealing with trying to figure out experience. And I think in one of the D&D Beyond videos, I think it was Jeremy Crawford, said that he found that in trying to build encounters using the Dungeon Master Guide version, it was confusing. So they sort of developed this version instead. So basically it says, assess the characters. Even though character level is important, you should also take into note how many hit points, saving throw modifiers, and how much damage the mightiest character can deal. Then choose the encounter size. If it's a single opponent, your best candidate for that foe is one of the game's legendary characters, which are designed to fill that need. If it involves multiple monsters, decide roughly how many creatures you want to use before continuing to step 3, which we have a table here, which you can see. Determine numbers and challenge ratings. The solo monster, which it does have solo monster challenge rating, which is this table here, shows you which challenge rating to use for a legendary creature opposing a party of 4 or 5 or 6 characters. For example, for a party of 9th level characters, a CR 12 legendary creature makes an optimal encounter. For a more perilous battle, match up the characters with a legendary creature whose challenge rating is 1 or 2 higher than optimal. For an easy fight, use a legendary creature whose challenge rating is 3 or more lower. So if you have a challenge rating, or a party of level 5, 4 characters at level 5, it's saying a CR 7 creature is good for a single combat. And it's saying if you want to make it harder, make it like a CR 8 or 9. If you want to make it weaker, make it a CR 5 or 4. If your encounter features multiple monsters, balancing it makes it a little bit more work. They have a multiple monsters table, which is here. We'll get into that in a little bit. And then it basically goes through ad nauseum as to what the different... It's broken up into the different tier systems, 1 to 4, or 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 20. And it gives you some examples. Let's say you have a party of 4 third-level characters. Using this table, you can see one CR2 monster is a good match for the entire party, but that creature will likely have a hard time handling a CR3 creature. Weak monsters and high-level characters. To save space on the table and keep things simple, some of the lower challenge ratings are missing from the higher level tables. For example, ratings do not appearing on the table assume a 1 to 12 ratio, indicating that 12 creatures of those challenge rating are equivalent to 1 creature of a specific level. Then it says selecting monsters, and here we can get a little close-up of the multiple... Where is it? The multiple monsters table. Right, you can see that all the way down there. It talks about how to adjust, look at the hit points, the attacks, the abilities. Then it has add flavor, which I like. If you already have ideas how to flesh out your encounter, you can just deal away with this, but it's basically got things like monster personality. Is it a joker? Is it a bully? Is it cowardly? What are the relationships to this monster? Does it have a rival in the party? Is this monster worshipped and allies will die for it, so people will come out after it? Then it has a section here for adding terrains and traps to alter things up, because I find terrain is a great way to just take a seemingly simple encounter and switch it up. If the whole area is difficult terrain, or there's things the monsters can be hide behind, that really will change up the way the game is played. And then there's a random events. So, a number of the tables in the DMG can suggest random events. The tables used for encounter location, weird locales, and wilderness weather in Chapter 5 of the DMG are a good starting point. The tables in Appendix A can be useful for indoor and outdoor combats, especially the tables for obstacles, traps, and tricks. Finally, consult the random encounter tables in the next section for inspiration. And there's just a quick matchup, character level, just to give you an idea of 1 monster, 2 monsters, and 4 monsters to match a character, basically to figure it out. So 1 9th level character, 1 4th level monster, and so on, to give you a quick little matchup idea. This is random encounter tables. I'm not going to go through all of these because there's a lot. But essentially, they are broken up into the tiers again, 1 to 4, 5 to 10, 11 to 16, 17 to 20. So this right here, just this full page, is just Arctic encounters. This whole thing, right? This starts coastal. Each of the results on the table represents a certain kind of challenge. If you let the dice have their way, the result is a large number of monsters. It basically has this whole thing about, like, should they fight? Should they run? We've got Arctic, coastal, desert, forest, grassland, hill, mountain, swamp, underdark, and then underwater. Oh, and urban. We do have an urban encounter as well. So there you go. So that's a lot, right? A lot to go through. Then we get to the Traps Revisited section. I don't really think I'm going to go through this because it is covered in the Unearthed Arcana. I did do a review on that. And I don't know if there's actually enough. To be honest, I haven't fully read through this, so I don't know if there's enough to do a whole separate video on. But it goes through the differences of a simple trap and a complex trap. So we can see simple traps, bear trap, pit trap, poison needle, crossbow. There's a little sidebar up here about how to make your traps meaningful. Make them seem like, take them above and beyond. And we have, again, designing. This whole section is on designing simple traps. All about the save DCs and the damage they should do, what should trigger them, where to place them. Then we get into complex traps. So you've got Path of Blades. These are basically what we saw in the Unearthed Arcana, where it was like a series of whirling blades. The Sphere of Crushing Doom, so your Indiana Jones boulder trap. Poison Tempest, this is basically a poison tornado. How to design them. Look at the art too. Like, look at that. How great is that? And then complex traps and legendary monsters. Although legendary creature can move, improve actions, and so forth, the trap is set to a specific script, an aspect that has the potential to make a complex trap stale and predictable. That's where dynamic elements come in. They keep their players on their toes, and so on. Then a whole section on defeating the traps. Then we have Downtime Revisited, which again was echoed pretty heavily in the Unearthed Arcana about downtime. So the first section here is all about rivals, because that was a big part of those things where, like, you could develop a rival. And the first whole section is about developing rivals. What their agendas are. We have example rivals in this table here. What the rivals' goals, their assets, their plans are. Then we have a couple of sample rivals. We have Marina Rodimus. Rodimus clan was a small but powerful family of traders in the city. They pulled up stakes and left town. Marina, the youngest child, was left to restore her family's prestige. In truth, the family fled because its members became afflicted with lycanthropy. They joined a clan of were-rats. Marina wants to become the most respected, most important merchant in town. She has a small fortune in gold. Her abilities as a were-rat. She's an alchemist and a necromancer. Marina works to discredit and ruin other merchants. Her were-rat spies on her opponent and sneaks into warehouses, unleashing hordes of rats to spoil goods. She's even victimized a few of her own warehouses to avoid suspicion. If her plans fail, she's a terrible alternative. Her knowledge of alchemy has enabled her to create a plague that will unleash onto the city through her rats. If she can't rule, nobody will. And then we have High Priest Cheldar as another rival here. So then we have downtime activities, resolving the activities. They do, again, keep with the work week template that we saw before. Some activities require days, weeks, or months. Character must spend at least 8 hours of each day engaged in downtime activity to count for the days for the activity's completion. And then there is the section about how there can be complications during those. So the first one we hear is buying a magic item. So finding magic items to purchase require at least 1 work week of effort and 100 GP in expenses. Character seeking to buy a magic item must make a persuasion check to determine the quality of the seller found. Then they gain a +1 bonus on the check for every work week beyond the first. That is, you know what? This is different because it has rolls on the various tables as well. So I tell you what, I'm actually going to stop and I'm going to cover this in its own separate video comparing it to the Unearthed Arcana. Because the traps look relatively simple, but there's actually quite a bit of change. Like, I mean, just the magic items down here for award. Oh, I'm sorry. That's for awarding magic items, which is a new section, which I am going to cover. So, basically, the Dungeon Master's Guide assumes a certain amount of treasure will be found over the course of a campaign. Over 20 levels of typical play, the game expects 45 rolls on treasure hoard tables distributed as followed: 7 rolls on challenge 0 to 4 table, 18 rolls on 5 to 10, 12 on 11 to 16, and 8 on 17 plus. Because many of the table results call for more than 1 magic item, those 45 rolls will result in the character obtaining roughly 100 magic items. The optional system described here yields the same results of items distributed properly through the spectrum of rarity while enabling you to control exactly which items the characters have a chance of acquiring. So, we have distribution by rarity. So, this alternative method of treasure determination focuses on choosing magic items based on their rarity rather than rolling on the items in the magic item table. This method uses 2 tables, magic items by tier and by rarity. So by tier, the magic item awarded by tier table shows the number of magic items a D&D party typically gains during a campaign, culminating in the group having accumulated 100 at level 20. The emphasis on the table the emphasis is on characters level 5 to 10 than in any other tiers in design, or is by design. The second tier is where most of the play will happen, and the items gained in that tier prepare the characters for higher level. So by tier, it's saying we got 1 to 4, 5 to 10, 11 to 16, 17 to 20, 9 minor items and 2 major items for tier 1, 28 minor and 6 major for tier 2, 24 minor and 6 major for tier 3, and 19 minor and 6 major for tier 4, for a total of 80 minor items, 20 major items, and 100 items total. There's also down here magic items awarded by rarity. The magic items awarded by rarity takes the number of magic items awarded by tier and breaks it into the way it's shown. So we have minor and major, and then common, uncommon, rare, very rare, legendary, and then it also breaks it up. So tiers going down this way, 1 to 4, 5 to 10, and then minor and major. It says both tables make a distinction between minor and major. The distinctions in the Dungeon Master Guide aren't used there. In this book, you'll see that those listed on Magic Items table A through E are the minor items, and the major items are F through I. Basically, this is something we sort of all knew, because A through E is basically consumables and scrolls and a couple lesser items, whereas F is where you start getting things that are quantified as uncommon weapons and wondrous items. So that makes sense. Choosing items by level, you decide when to place an item in an adventure that you're creating or modifying. Usually because you think the story calls for a magic item, the characters need one, or the players would be especially pleased to get one. When you want to select an item as a treasure for an encounter, the magic items awarded by rarity table serves as your item budget. Here's how to use it. Jot down a copy of the table in your notes so that you can make adjustments to the numbers as you select items to be placed in the adventure. Refer to the line in the CR or the level/CR column that corresponds to the following values: the level of the player characters, the challenge rating of the magic item's owner, or the challenge rating of the group of creatures guarding the item. The entries in that row of the table indicate the total number of items that should be appropriate for the characters to receive. Choose a magic item of any rarity for which the item in this row is not 0. When the characters obtain an item, modify your notes to include it and then remove it from there. It also has stuff for choosing items piecemeal. If you prefer a more free-form method, simply select each magic item you want to give out. When the characters acquire one, deduct it from the magic item's reward table by rarity. Overstocking an adventure, the magic item table in the section are designed or based on the number of magic items are expected to receive, not the number available in the adventure. When creating or modifying the adventure, assume that the characters won't find all the items you place in it, unless most of the loot is easy to find locations. Here's a good rule of thumb. An adventure can include a number of items that's 25% higher than the number in the tables. For example, an adventure designed to take characters from 1 to 4 might include 14 items rather than 11 in the expectation that 3 won't be found. Then there's a section here called Are Magic Items? This is probably going to be a big one. Are magic items necessary in a campaign? The D&D game is built on the assumption that magic items appear sporadically and that they are always a boon unless an item bears a curse. Characters and monsters are built to face each other without the help of magic items, which means that having a magic item always makes a character more powerful or more versatile than a generic character of the same level. As a DM, you never have to worry about awarding magic items just so the characters can keep up with the campaign's threats. Magic items are truly prizes. Are they useful? Absolutely. Are they necessary? No. Magic items can go from nice to necessary in the rare group that has no spellcasters, no monk, and no PCs capable of casting magic weapon. Having no magic makes it extremely difficult for a party to overcome monsters that have resistances to immunity to non-magical damage. In such a game, you want to be generous with magic weapons or else avoid using such monsters. Then we have here a whole list of common magic items. I am debating whether or not I should do this here just because we're already over an hour at this point. But, yeah. You know what? I think I'm going to do a separate video on common... I really should have scripted this, but I tend to just do my videos by the seat of my pants. So, we have a whole bunch of common magic items here. And when I say common, I mean that they don't really give you any mechanical benefit. They're just cool, interesting items. Like, right off the bat here is the Armor of Gleaming. Any medium or heavy armor, the armor just never gets dirty, right? Like, things like that. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of those, as well as a thing for creating common magic items. Let's see, Chapter 7 in the DMG, for example, the what minor property does it have, might inspire you to create a magic item that allows a character to speak and understand the goblin language, or a magic item that projects its user's voice over a great distance. Then we have tons of magic item rolling tables. We have common table. Actually, these tables are the name, the type of item, and whether they're attunement, yes or no, and if they're by a specific class. So common, or minor items, uncommon, minor items, uncommon, minor items rare, minor items very rare, minor items legendary, which again is basically just spell scrolls, universal sovereign glue, and apparently, and potion of storm giant strength. And we have the same for major items for uncommon, rare, very rare, legendary. Has a section here for recharging without dawn. What if you're in a plane of existence that lacks anything resembling dawn? The DM should choose a time every 24 hours when those items would recharge on that plane of existence. Then we have a section on spells, which I feel like, again, I'm going to have to do a separate video on just because there's so many. But we do have I think every class got new spells. Paladins got the least in only getting 3. So there is a couple changes. Like I did notice that there were some elemental evil spells shifted around. For instance, sorcerers now get absorb elements. I will go through these because some of these we have seen in Unearthed Arcana, but they are they've been updated since to be a little bit clearer on the wording, a little bit better. So I'll do a separate video just on spells alone. Let's get past those. Getting to the end here. So this section is wholly new. This Appendix A is shared campaigns. So we haven't seen anything like this officially in 5th edition. So we've got really only one page on this. So coordinating regular scheduled D&D game sessions to keep a game active and vibrant can be a challenge. So in short, a world filled with distractions, it can be hard to keep a campaign going. Enter the concept of a shared campaign. In a shared campaign, more than one member of the group can take the role of the DM. A shared campaign is episodic rather than continuous, with each play session comprising a complete adventure. The largest shared campaign are administered by the Adventurers League and overseen by Wizards of the Coast. You can also create your own shared campaign for a school D&D club, game store, a library, or anywhere else where players and DMs gather. A shared campaign establishes a framework that allows a player to take a character from one DM's game to another within the shared campaign. It creates a situation where almost nothing can prevent a scheduled session from happening. The roster of potential players can be quite large, virtually ensuring that any session has at least the minimum number of characters needed to play. If everyone shows up to play at the same time, multiple DMs can ensure that everyone gets to play. And basically it goes on to describe how to do this. So designing adventures involves a set of coordination considerations that's a little bit different than your average group. So every adventure begins and ends in the same play session. Session or an event can't end with an adventure unfinished, since there's no way to guarantee the same players and the DM will be available next time. Makes sense. Again, it's very Adventurers League. So typically, it should be 2 or 4 hours, in which 3 or 4 simple combat encounters, or 1 or 2 complex ones, 3 or 4 scenes involving significant exploration or social interaction. With these constraints, it can be difficult to create open-ended adventures. A time limit assumes a specific starting and end point. A good way to get around this restriction is to create an adventure with multiple possible endings. Location-based adventures also work well with this format. A dungeon presents a natural limit on characters' options while still giving the players choices. The adventure could be a quest to defeat a creature or recover an item, but the path to achieving that goal can be different for each group. For some adventure narratives, try to focus on simple but flexible combat encounters, or adventures. I keep saying just encounters or events. Give the players a chance to plan out how they'll protect the temple, etc. And then there's like a code of conduct rule here, which is basically, I think, the Adventurers League code of conduct. During a play session, participants are expected to follow the DM's lead and refrain from arguing with the DM over or other players over rules. Let other players speak and allow other players to get attention from the DM. Avoid excessive conversation that is not relevant to the adventure. Discourage others from using social media to bully, shame, or intimidate other participants. Make the DM or the campaign's administrators aware of disruptive and aggressive behavior so that appropriate action can be taken. And then combat encounters. Design your combat encounters for one of the 4 tiers. Within each tier, it's a good idea to use a specific level as a starting point. For each battle, provide guidelines to help DMs adjust difficulty up or down based on a stronger or weaker party. Adventures in a shared campaign that uses variant rules for gaining levels and acquiring treasure don't include experience points, rewards, or specific amounts and kinds of treasure. So, character creation. Again, this is continuing on the shared campaign idea. Player's Handbook +1. You should think about which product players can use to create characters. This is basically Adventure League 101 if you're unfamiliar, guys. The Adventurers League specifies that a player can use the Player's Handbook and one other official D&D source, such as a book or a PDF, to create a character. The restriction ensures that players don't need a lot of books, and it makes things easier on the DM. Ability scores, it basically says use the standard array or point buy. Starting equipment, for the sake of simplicity and efficiency, it's a good idea to require them to take starting equipment rather than rolling for gold. Variant rules. The Adventurers League, for instance, has variant systems for gaining experience and acquiring treasure. These house rules presented below serve as a sort of common language, ensuring that the rewards all characters receive are equivalent no matter what kind of adventure a character experienced. So, character advancement, it says. This system rewards every character and player for taking part in the session. Character reaches 1 checkpoint for each hour an adventure is designed to last. Note that the award is based on the character's projected playtime rather than the actual playtime. The reward for completing an adventure designed for 2 hours of play is 2 checkpoints, even if the group spends more than 2 hours playing through it. If a character completes an adventure designed for a tier higher than the character's current tier, the character is awarded 1 additional checkpoint. For example, if a 2nd level character completes a 6th level adventure that takes 2 hours, the character gets 3 checkpoints. Playing time might seem like an odd way to measure experience points, but the concept is in keeping with how a shared campaign is meant to work. A character played for 10 hours reaches the same number of checkpoints whether the character went up against a dragon or spent all that time lurking in a pub. The approach ensures that a player's preferred style is neither penalized nor rewarded. Using checkpoints. So at level 1 to 4, reaching 4 checkpoints is sufficient enough to level up. At 5th level or higher, reaching 8 checkpoints is needed to advance to the next level. So essentially, in this share, at the end of the play session, characters must level up if they have reached enough checkpoints to do so. The required number of checkpoints is expended, and any remaining checkpoints are applied towards the opportunity for advancement. So if you think about it that way, and you follow this exactly, right? Every 4 hours of playtime. So let's say that turns out to roughly be 1 session. Let's call it 2 sessions, right? Let's make it 1. So in 4 hours, in 1 4-hour play session, it's saying based on this, for 1 session you should go from 1 to 2, the next session 2 to 3, the next session 3 to 4. Then from then on, it's 8 points to get to level 5 or higher. So that's basically every 2 sessions, 2 4-hour sessions, they're saying you should get up a level, just to break that out by that. Individual treasure. In a shared campaign, each character receives a fixed number of gold pieces upon gaining a new level. As an additional benefit, characters are not required to put out gold to maintain a lifestyle. Instead, the character begins with a modest lifestyle, which improves as the characters attain higher levels. So, individual treasure, level 2 to 4, modest, 75 gold. Level 5 to 10, comfortable lifestyle, 150 gold. Level 11 to 16, wealthy, 550 gold, and 17 to 20, aristocratic, 5,500 gold. Magic items. Each basically awarding magic points, similar to the checkpoints. So, each character earns treasure points based on adventure tier in its intended playtime. 1 treasure point is awarded for every 2 hours played in a tier 1 or tier 2 adventure. 1 treasure point is awarded for every 1 hour played in a tier 3 or tier 4 adventure. As with the variant rules for gaining levels, this award is based on the adventure's projected playing time rather than the actual time a group spent at the table. Creating an item list. DMs for the shared campaign should work together to compile a list of magic items the players can purchase. Involving all the DMs helps to ensure that everybody's on the same page. Naturally, list of available items is longer for adventures in higher tiers. For instance, treasure points from a tier 1 adventure can be spent on items from tables A, B, C, and F. Any items on the first 3 tables cost 4 points, and an item on table F costs 8 points. Players must spend treasure points at the end of a play session, immediately after determining whether their characters have gained a level. The order of these steps is important since a character might enter a new tier because of the level gain. Players are entitled to choose any approved item from one of the magic item tables. Magic items cost more treasure points than a character can earn in a 2 or 4 hour session. To buy such an item, a character can make a deposit, spending treasure points on the item until it's paid off, at which point the character gains the item. So you can see here is the where is it? Treasure points is right there. So you can kind of see the breakout of the magic item table, tiers, and then the point cost. So basically, if you wanted like a +1 weapon that's in available at tiers 1 to 4, it costs 8 points. If you wanted a very rare item, it's 10 points at tiers 3 to 4. Buying and selling. Characters can use their monetary treasure to purchase anything from the equipment list in Chapter 5 of the Player's Handbook. In addition, the Adventurers League allows players to purchase potions and scrolls below, and it has the list. Potion of Healing is 50, Climbing 75, Animal Friendship 100, Greater Healing 100, Water Breathing 100, Superior Healing 500, Supreme Healing 5000, invisibility 5,000, and then we've got spells, cantrip 25, first 75, second 150, third 300, fourth 500, and fifth 1,000. Selling items. In a shared campaign, characters are not entitled to sell items they find on adventures or equipment they purchase with their personal funds. Weapons, armor, and other gear used by enemies are considered too damaged to have any monetary value. And then last, but not least, here we have character names. So this is non-human names, so we have Dragonborn male and female. This is a D100 tables. It looks to be about 50 or so names for Dragonborn females, males, and then we have Dragonborn clan names here. And then we have Dwarf, female, male, and clan. We have Elf child names, Elf female adult, Elf female, or Elf male adult, Elf family names, Gnome female, Gnome male, Gnome clan, Halfling female, Halfling male, Halfling family, Half-orc female, Half-orc male, Tiefling female, Tiefling male, Tiefling virtue name, and then we have human names. So we've got Arabic themed, male and female, Celtic male and female, Chinese male and female, Egyptian male and female, English male and female, French male and female, German male and female, Greek male and female, Indian male and female, Japanese male and female, Mesoamerican male and female, Niger Congo male and female, Norse male and female, Polynesian male and female, Roman male and female, Slavic male and female, Spanish male and female. So we've got a ton of different name options, which is great if you're just creating NPCs and you want to try to give them, you don't have much idea what you want them to be, but you have an idea if you want them to be Viking culture, and we might go to, like, say, the Norse one, and we've got Folkvar and Helga is the Nordic Viking couple. Anyway, guys, that is Xanathar's Guide to Everything. It is 192 pages. Again, this is the collector's edition, local game store version of the book. Stay tuned, as there will be, again, all of those individual videos that I had talked about throughout coming out over the next couple of days. And I also will be giving away this copy. So I am working on the details of the giveaway, but stay tuned. I'll be giving this away, and it'll be typical to all our other giveaways. All you need to do is follow the channel, basically here on YouTube and on Twitch, and that'll pretty much be it, guys. So sorry it went really long, almost an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, but there's a lot of new content to go over. It's not like an adventure module like Tomb of Annihilation where there's 3 things to talk about. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.